Action.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Yesterday we had a lengthy discussion about different things, and I'll go over that in just a minute. But the Finance Committee has not received the budget yet, and that's a problem because according to the statute, we're supposed to review it before it's submitted. But I understand that it's never been on time. And I think we need to review the language in the statute in order to comply with it. Because if it's never been done on time, then how do we comply with the statute? So I would suggest that we review that to see if we can become compliant. Otherwise, we're liable to get another complaint.
Okay.
With that, I requested several reports, and Mr. Case provided them in a timely fashion, and we have some issues that are really strange for me from a business perspective. Since the first of the year, there's a 10% loss in personnel, it appears to me. There's 27 open positions since January. There's been 17 positions filled since January. And if you put the total together, we're nearing 20% change in personnel. I couldn't run a business like that, I know that. The legislature did eliminate 3 positions. I'm sure it's because of the budget constraints. And I would think that positions that have been vacant since the 1st of January, or in the at least for 4 or 5 months, you would think maybe you got to review whether you need these people at all or not. I mean, if we haven't used them in 4 or 5 months, maybe we don't need them at all. We have no control over this, but I just thought it's important for the commission and the public to see what's happening here. The out-of-state travel by Endow from February 1st through June 30th came to $49,287. Now, if you add that up, it's like $100 grand a year. And I'm just wondering how many of those out-of-state travels, I looked at some of them, I couldn't figure out what they were doing. But I'm thinking we need to, or the department actually needs to review that. And I know there's going to be more cuts this next year from legislature. That'd certainly be an area to save some money. We were talking about the commission budget, and we already voted on the county advisory board budget. The commission voted, or the committee voted on the commission budget to increase it by $2,413 a year in order to send 2 commissioners to the summer meeting and 1 commissioner to the winter meeting. So, let's see. The other thing that was discussed that I think would be a very important thing to consider for the future is video conferencing some of these meetings, especially if we had the capability in the Elko office, the Las Vegas office, and the Reno office. We could save an awful lot of money in travel. Travel, rooms, a lot of expenses there. According to Mr. Cates, I believe it's like 50 grand a location to set that up. I think it'd be money well spent. Probably get it back in 2 or 3 years. That's all I have.
There's some interesting proposals. Now, the proposal there with the video conferencing, that seems especially interesting. I know I've continually been amused on that. I find that video conferencing is a problem with NDOW, and yet, I mean, I think day before I came out here, I had a video conference. My brother-in-law is in Qatar, and it's perfect and it's free. Granted, that's a small scale one-to-one, but you'd think that's using no special equipment whatsoever than like a $19 camera. So we should be able to come up with something. Go ahead, Mr. Pearl.
The department has in the past checked with. We have made strides in it. We're now doing audio connections for committee meetings and the like. But the real solution is to be able to do video conferencing. Again, in my previous life in business and that, we had a video conferencing room in which to set that system up, it was roughly $50,000. But it was like basically almost having people right in the room and discussing back and forth. Now, in a business where an executive might be making $200,000 a year, and he has to go to Las Vegas just for a 1-hour meeting, he wastes that day and maybe a portion of another. That's not a good use of anybody's time. And so businesses are more and more going to the video conferencing aspect. And I realize this is a tough time to be discussing spending $50,000 a location, which probably right off the bat would be about $150,000. We do have some problems in the Reno office because of cable capacity that have to be addressed. But this is how business is doing things nowadays. Instead of sending all of their executives, all of their office people, all of the to these meetings, they're able to stay in their own place. The only expenditure is a couple hours time instead of a day and a half. Again, that's something that will have to come sometime in the future. What concerned me was in this time when we are looking at trying to cut things is that one of the items on there that kind of stood out and was mentioned by the chairman of the committee was a cave diving seminar in Florida. Maybe it was necessary. I didn't hear any explanation of it, so I couldn't tell you whether it was or not. I'm not aware of too many caves that we dive in Nevada. But I think we have to take a serious look at some of the things that we're going to fund in the future, one of which I've already mentioned is the communication area. The chairman set forth what our recommendations were quite well for the WAFWA meetings, summer meetings in Big Sky next year in Oahu the following year. I assume that the winter meetings are still going to be in San Diego. No?
Tucson.
Both the next 2 years?
No, just
1 year. About the same expenses, I would assume. So we recommended that in light of what Mr. Lent and I found out, I think it's almost necessary to send 2 commissioners to the summer meeting to cover that's the big meeting. The planning takes place in the spring meeting and I think one person could handle that. But I think it's got to be in the budget that way in order for us to not have to come back begging for scraps, so to speak, in that. That pretty much concludes my remarks.
Thank you. We'll get Mr. Vogler, then we'll have Vice Chairman Lent.
Having experienced the budget crunch already at Department of Agriculture, they swept a whole bunch of our accounts. Last year, the state, this fiscal year, whatever you want to call it, down $700 million. We're in the hole for $3 billion this year in the next biennium. And this, compared to other departments, this department is very flush with money. You're just like a ripe piece of fruit hanging low on the tree right now. And again, I realize they're fee-based. Right now, they already have the capacity at the Department of Agriculture, Board of Agriculture in Elko for hookup. Great Basin College, I have attended a video room that they have there. It's not as nice as this, but it works. And it's already up and running, and Great Basin College leases it to the tax commission for next to nothing. So there is a capacity to save some money there. And as far as getting bang for the buck, I'm astonished that the $3 predator fee that I and other people pay in the last issue, there's nothing in that bill that says we have to have somebody to necessarily administer. We already have that with Mr. Jensen. It seems like that if we could look through our whole system and look a little more fiscally responsible, otherwise probably the next person you should hire is somebody from the Department of Redundancy Department. I mean, we have got to get fiscally responsible and fast, or somebody at that legislature is going to go, hey, NDOW only represents a very small minority of people in the state of Nevada, and they're liable to come down on us. We had funds at agriculture that we didn't think they could touch, and they got them. So just forewarned is forearmed. Maybe Mr. Jensen's people can design these projects as well. We have a biologist in every county practically, and 2 and 3 in several counties, that could maybe spend part of their day saying, you know what, we've got a project up in this corner or that corner, we got a concentration of coyotes or other things, rather than having to have someone design them for us. $90,000 of that $3 predator fee put a lot of coyotes on ice. Thank you.
All right, Mr. Vice Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. My concern I expressed at the Finance Committee meeting is this budget is not lawful in accordance with NRS statutes, which says it must be reviewed with recommendations before submitting to the budget office. Now, what if that would have said and approved? I guarantee you it would have been in our hands before it went to the budget office. Therefore, you must prepare a preliminary budget prior to July 1 or something to make us comply with the law, because NDOW always complies with the law. You know, your game wardens enforce laws, and we're in violation of law by not approving it before it goes to the budget office. And you said you'd send a letter to the budget office saying this budget is not in compliance with the statutes, because you got to send a letter to the budget office, because as you said, when it goes to the budget office, you can't change it. And so therefore we're in violation if we want to review and make recommendations, and we're not in compliance with Nevada statute. So I think you've got to find some way to help us, either a preliminary budget, get it to us earlier, and if it's got to be in by September the 1st, somehow the commission has got to review it and make recommendations before that. There's got to be a way to do it, and putting a letter to the budget office when you submit it September the 1st saying this has not been reviewed by the commission, it makes against the law, the way I see it. And so there's got to be a way we can solve that, because this commission has never, ever approved the budget before it got submitted, as I know of. And we've got to work together and find a way to get it done, and I'm sure that we can do that. We can get it reviewed before you submit it and make recommendations like the law says.
Mr. Cates, Mr. Mayor.
Well, there's a bunch of things to discuss. We didn't interrupt you about the teleconferencing, but we're way ahead of you there. It did take $150,000. I mean, it's $50,000 per office. Patrick, you want to talk about what our capability is?
Sure. We currently do have some limited video conference capability. We just got that online, I don't know, within the last 6 months. It is basically a webcam through the internet, through Department of Information Technology. And we've started to use that for some committees and internal meetings, and it works pretty good for small groups, but it's very limited in terms of supporting a commission and having enough cameras and good enough audio to pick everybody up. If you want that, that is the roughly $50,000 per location that Commissioner Capurro talked about. We're very interested in that. We've looked at a lot of different ways to configure our rooms. I've sent my IT staff to other state agencies that have similar equipment. We had some, and Commissioner Capurro referred to this as well, we had some technical issues with our infrastructure and having enough bandwidth to support these systems. We resolved that at Elko. We installed a second T1 line to give them enough capacity. And we are working on solving that issue at the Valley Road location in Reno. A particular problem there, bandwidth. When we upload a video to our website, it can bring all of our computers down. So it's quite a problem. We had been working with DoIT and thought we had a solution. They were going to give us a microwave uplink to their communications towers, which is excellent. They had been promising us that since the winter, and we just found out recently that they're now saying that they don't have enough room on their tower for that. And we're taking that up their chain of command to see if we can resolve it, because they had been telling us they were just waiting for the snow to get off the mountain and would install that for us. Then that would allow us to then move forward with video conferencing equipment. But we would still have to purchase, and it is a pretty substantial upfront cost. In terms of other locations that have the capability, yes, there are agencies that already have some of that capability, and we have looked at that as well. And that may meet our needs at some times, but what we found, and my experience has been, is you're kind of at the mercy of whatever agency owns that equipment. And availability is an issue. Getting availability at all the locations at the same time that you need it is an issue. So we were really trying to set up that capability in-house. I think most state agencies have faced that. You know, I've been with the state 15 years, and I'd say for the last 8 years, the agencies have been rolling out various types of video conferencing equipment, and that always becomes the issue. People can't get the access when they need it, and so they end up installing their own equipment. But it's something we're very interested in, and we're working towards that. But we got to get our infrastructure in place first, and Valley Road's the last location I've got to solve that problem.
Yeah, the other thing with the commission meetings itself, when we've checked into using other agencies, they can't guarantee that the date upon which we've noticed the meeting, it will be available, because you're always trumped. University is a good example. They said, yeah, DRI, but we cannot guarantee that that you will not be trumped and that your meeting will have to be postponed or canceled. And with our open meeting law, we just don't want to take that chance. But so we're definitely working on it. It's obvious that by reducing travel to meetings, there's no reason to have somebody drive 5 hours from Elko for a 1 hour meeting or a 2 hour meeting, even though they add things onto their day. So no, we're very interested in it. We're very close to having something.
Ken tasked me with that shortly after I started, and I regret that we haven't quite resolved all the issues yet, but have been working on it continuously.
Okay. Anybody else? Let's see, we did not do public comment on this one, did we? Let's do public comment.
Could I just make a few other comments, if I may?
All right.
Just to clarify a few points. Okay. As far as the out-of-state travel issue, just for clarification, the cave diving certification training in Florida, that was for our biologist 2, who is assigned to the Devil's Hole pupfish. And in order to do their surveys, the individual did need to do cave diving, which is extremely hazardous. And if we had not provided appropriate training for that, we certainly could have had some liability issues if the person were injured and killed. Sounds a little frivolous, cave diving in Florida, but it was certainly for the safety of our employees. And we did spend about $50,000 in the second half of last year on travel. I will say that we already have made reductions in our travel budget. We reduced, I can't remember the exact amount in FY10, I think it was about $30,000 in travel funds that we reduced. For the current fiscal year 11, we reduced our travel budgets by about $40,000. We went through and looked for anything that wasn't core to our mission. If it was sort of some supplemental training or something like that, we cut it out. But a lot of the travel that was listed on that report really is coordination with other wildlife entities in other states, WAFWA, that sort of thing that really helps coordinate and develop policy for wildlife management. But we did make reductions, and as we're looking at 12 and 13 budgets, we continue to do so.
Can you submit those reductions to the committee? Have they been submitted?
Well, the reductions for 10 and 11, those were approved in the special session. We talked about the reductions. I don't recall if in a prior finance committee I gave you a report on that, but I can certainly supply that. I mean, it's readily available.
Yeah.
What was the other issue? Oh, on the vacancy report. We have the turnover that we have had in the last half of the year is a little high, but it's not abnormal. Even for any state agency under current circumstances, there's an awful lot of people in state service who are eligible to retire or shortly to become eligible to retire, and a lot of people have done so, particularly with the fiscal circumstances of the state, just of their own accord. You know, a lot of people have just said enough and are ready to retire. As far as that list, I mean, we have a process we go through to fill positions, and we don't just automatically fill them. And on that same report, it showed about 4 or 5 positions that we are purposefully holding just for savings and to withhold running programs. Lake Mead Hatchery, for instance, there's a position we're holding. So we do that all the time. We have a process right now where we have to go through the budget office and the governor's office before we even get approval to fill those positions. And we certainly are looking at vacancies to help us meet our budget targets. And when the executive budget office gets our budget in the fall, they look at vacancies, any position that's been vacant for any extended period of time, and they generally delete those. And we're looking at them as well. So it's something we're definitely cognizant of and manage to.
Okay.
And just, I'm sorry, but this one's germane to what you're going to need to vote on. I did pass out a copy of the CAB and commission budgets. That's the action item that you need to consider. And the first page is simply a history of how much we spent on the commission and how much we spent on the CABs. I won't go into that in a lot of detail, but just to let you know that the CAB amounts, there's been some confusion around this, but the amount of money that we transfer to the CABs is the amount of money that the NDOW expended on the CABs. It does not necessarily correlate to how much the counties spent on the CABs. In statute, the commission every year approves the CAB budgets. That amount is then work programmed into our budget, and we transfer those amounts in a lump sum to the counties. And the counties live off of that money for the CABs until it's gone. And sometimes it can take a year or two before that money is expended. So the county will then roll over the money we gave them if they didn't expend it all in the current year. So when you look at that history, you see a lot of years where there's no activity. That doesn't necessarily mean the cab wasn't active. It just means we didn't transfer them money. So just a point of clarification on that. The next page lists the line item GL expenditures that we have planned budgeted for the cabs and the commission. Base budget is what we spent in fiscal year 10, the fiscal year that just ended. The M150 columns are the adjustments that we were proposing to make. One of the adjustments that we made was to bring the cab budgets up to the amount that the commission approved for the current fiscal year, which is the $46,000. That's kind of standard in how we adjust the cab budgets. We just bring them up to whatever their current year amounts are. And as I said, it varies depending on their activity, how much money they have to roll over. And I suggested to the committee that you not necessarily pay too much attention to that number because you've got to review their budgets annually anyway. But the commission piece, we really don't have a lot of adjustments here, just some minor recurring, non-recurring transactions that the budget office would make us remove. But on the last page, we have the cost estimates for out-of-state travel for the WAFWA conferences. The July 2011 Big Sky, that would hit fiscal year 12. And the July 2012 in Hawaii, that would hit fiscal year 13. And I just want to correct the numbers that I heard Commissioner Howell mention. My understanding what was voted on, we would need an additional, if you look at the Big Sky Conference, we would need to send 2 commissioners to that. We would need an additional $2,177 to supplement the budget. In addition to that, the committee voted to send 1 member to the winter conference. And so in addition to that amount, they voted to add $2,413 to that $277 amount. To add that $2,413 amount to each year to account for that winter meeting, which I had not originally calculated here. So the amount of adjustments that the committee voted on, adding those two figures together, would be $4,590 for fiscal year 12 and $6,492 for fiscal year 13. Those would be the amounts that we would increase the CAB's budget for. And that's my understanding of what the committee voted on Thursday.
All right, we're out to public comment. We really need to get that done.
Dixon, Paul Dixon. Not here.
Anybody else?
No,
Seeing
I have
no-
other cards.
Seeing nobody else, move on. We'll close public comment period and move on. We had Mr. Turrell.
The reason we used the $2,413 figure is that is the estimate that was given to us on the sheet. So we just simply moved that over to cover an estimate for the winter meeting and what we thought was San Diego. Now it's Tucson and San Diego in the following year. That's the explanation of why we did vote on the 2413. But it was in light of the fact that it was under the total estimate. And if that needs to be boosted up, then we need to know about it right now.
Well, what the committee voted on was to, as I understood it, was to accept the adjustments that show on this sheet. So for instance, $2,177 plus the $2,413. You voted to add that to each year in addition to the amount shown on this sheet.
What shows on the sheet is the summer meetings for the next 2 fiscal years.
That's correct.
So we added to it the WAFWA winter meetings for 2011 and 2012.
Yes.
And we simply pulled the figure over that you showed us as the total estimate for that, and that shows us 2413. Now, if that's wrong, let's adjust it now.
No, I don't think it's, I think the way you voted on it yesterday was accurate. When Commissioner Howell read it, all I heard was the $2,413. But you have to add to that the amount we need to increase for the two people to go to the summer meeting.
Yeah,
So it's 2,177 plus 2,413 for fiscal year 12.
Okay. Anybody else have any questions? Commission? Comments? Motions?
an action item, so we need.
I move that we accept the committee's recommendations for the financial information that we were given, which was basically the cabs and the commission budget
Second.
for 212, 213.
Okay, so we're working, okay. So it's been properly moved and seconded that we approve the County Advisory Board and Board of Wildlife Commissioner budgets for 2012, 2013 as approved by the committee, by the Finance Committee. That's correct?
Can I make
Okay. Questions on the motion? Comments on the motion?
I just want to clarify that, as Patrick stated, that would be an increase to the commission budget of $45.90 for fiscal year 12 and $6,492 for fiscal year 13.
Right.
And would you make that part of the motion?
What my motion was as the committee recommended,
Okay.
which included those actions.
Okay,
Okay.
just want to be clear.
So are we clear on the numbers? Is everybody in the commission clear on what they're going to be voting on? Which numbers we're voting on? Any questions? They're clear? Make sure we're clear on the motion. Okay. All in favor of the motion, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Motion passes unanimously, 9-0. Gentlemen, do we want to have lunch, just have a short break?